Well, I'm Ed Taylor. I'm Dean of Undergraduate Academic Affairs at the University of Washington, and my job here is to introduce the illustrious Brian Williams. Good to see you, Brian. Welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me.
What a pleasure. Give me a second to just read an introduction of you. So just pause for a second. So, Brian, you are the founder and executive producer of Step Afrika, a native of Houston, Texas, and graduate of Howard University. Learned to step as a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity, Inc., Beta Chapter in the spring of 1989. While living in South Africa, began to research the percussive dance tradition of stepping, exploring the many sides of this exciting yet under-recognized American art form, and you founded Step Afrika. This will not be your first time here. You came here several years ago, 2017.
Yes.
Recognizing and performing around Jacob Lawrence.
Yes.
What was that like?
You know, that was a project. It was called The Migration, Reflections on Jacob Lawrence. I grew up loving the Migration series, those 60 panels that he created in the late 40s, early 50s, I think, when he did that work. And to bring those paintings to life through our performance was a real honor. And I'm so glad we were able to share it in Seattle, which is where he taught and lived for so many years. So that was a great time. And I can't wait to return now with Drumfolk.
Come back to your history and a little bit about HBCUs also. So, because HBCUs are significant to you, the Spelmans, the Morehouse, the Tuskegee, the Fisks, the Tougaloo's. Tell us about how you got introduced to STEP. I know the story, but tell the audience this.
Well, you know, Howard University is a historically Black college in Washington, D.C. And I'm not, even though I'm from Houston, Texas, I actually come from about 4 to 5 generations, I think 4 generations, who have gone to historically Black colleges and universities all across the country. So I really had no choice when it came to go to college. I was definitely going to go to an HBCU. And while Howard is where I became, you know, I got dive deeper into African American history and culture, of course. And it's also a place where I got introduced to the art form of stepping. I'll never forget, I walked onto Howard's campus in 1986 as a freshman, and I saw the Greek letter organizations, fraternities and sororities, gathered around in circles on campus, singing songs and doing very simple movements that I would then understand to be the art form of stepping. So it was very exciting to me to see that. It was very, you know, so if you've never seen that on a college campus, it's a very unique experience. It's a very African tradition, you know, African-American students in a circle, wearing similar colors, singing songs and doing different kind of, you know, movements. It was a very rich tradition. So I was struck by it immediately. And when I would later join a fraternity, and learn to actually step myself, it just kind of opened up a whole new world for me.
So you were there and you got introduced to STEP, but how did that become Step Afrika? That was the formation of your introduction to STEP.
Mm-hmm.
Move you and turn into this. Did you have any sense that you were in the formation of something as big as Step Afrika?
I mean, at the time, no, I think I was just more interested in really learning about this art form that I practiced traditionally. You know, stepping is for me, it's a folkloric tradition. It's not something you can go to a studio and learn. You have to be a part of the community in order to even, at least at that time, in order to even access the art form. So that was very interesting to me, how stepping was passed down from generation to generation. But then my interest in Africa developed also while I was at Howard University. So even though I was studying business, I was supposed to do the corporate thing at the time, I decided to switch gears. And my first job out of Howard was to live and work in Southern Africa.
What made that connection for you in your mind? And how did you see it there in South Africa?
Well, for those who don't know stepping is a percussive, polyrhythmic dance where you are both the music and the movement. So it's similar to tap and Irish step dance, where, you know, the body is the instrument. So in South Africa, I'll never forget, I came across the South African gum boot dance, which is also a percussive polyrhythmic dance where the body is the instrument. And I was struck at how similar the two art forms were, but they had never been brought together. So when I saw the South African gumboot dance, I immediately started working to create ways to connect the two art forms together. And my hope at the time would be, I would connect the art forms, and as a result, I would connect the people.
So talk about the talent that you found. Who is the talent and how do you find them? Who are the performers?
Well, this is what I really love about Step Afrika, and in particular, is because I feel that we've created space for artists who practice this art form of stepping that didn't exist before. Like Step Afrika is really credited with introducing the art form of stepping to the American theater.
When we see the dancers on stage, every one of them will have a college degree. That's a decision that you've made. What's the significance of that? I think I get it because I'm at a university. What's the significance of that for you?
You know, I gotta say, you're right. A lot of the artists, and what's funny, they don't have just degrees in the arts. Some are like biology students. One of my dancers now was a mathematics major, mathematics and dance, and another one criminal justice. So they come into the company not really having anticipated a career, a full-time career stepping. So I think people are still kind of shocked that they can enter a company like Step Afrika, and that's their job, which is to step and perform all over the world. But what it does do for us is we have such a range of talents and skills to pull from. It makes for a very interesting rehearsal room because they have so many other life experiences that they bring into the rehearsal room. And I think what we try to do is bring all that great energy and skill and excellence, if you will, to the stage.
So when you come to Meany in April, you'll be performing around the Stono Rebellion. You choose a particular theme, and then I want to talk about the Stono Rebellion in a moment. How do you choose them?
You know, I think the stories kind of choose us, to be honest. It's history that we get very, very excited about, I would say. Like the migration, that was just unbelievable because the Great Migration influenced so many, and it changed this country. It really did transform America, let alone African-American life and possibility. Hugely transformative moment in history. And we wanted to celebrate that. You know, we wanted to celebrate that history. And performing that work, we felt like we're celebrating our ancestors every time we hit the stage. And I love this work, Drumfolk, because as we travel across the country, 99% of Americans have never heard of the Stono Rebellion. And they leave the show with a really good understanding of what it was and its dramatic impact on African-American culture.
So let's talk a bit about the Stono Rebellion and how you want the audience to experience, because many will not know. We are 1739 in South Carolina. Group of 20 enslaved Africans decided that they're going to come together and engage in a form of resistance and coalition building, using sound and the sound of drums, to engage in this rebellion that ultimately becomes a violent rebellion, but a powerful resistance. And in many ways, what you're doing with Step Afrika is a through line from that point. But tell us about how you chose Stono Rebellion and what we should know about that moment in time and what the audience feel while they're sitting there and being in space with you.
I want the audience to think about who were these African people prior to arriving on the shores of South Carolina with thousands of years of culture and history behind them, now finding themselves in a new place, stripped away from their experience and having to redefine. Many Americans should be able to identify with that, since most of us come from other places and then although we've been here for quite some time. So that's important to me, you know, because I work with this piece in particular, we're very careful not to call people slaves. We say the enslaved, because For me, they are African people who were enslaved, and they had all this culture that they brought into America and then had to redefine. I did also want them to think about one thing when the Stono Rebellion happened was that they used the drum as a way to rally community together. And the drum could speak language across far distances, and it helped them rally others to their cause of the act of resistance. And the drum, after the Stono Rebellion, was made an illegal weapon and taken away from African people and the American plantation. So that's a fascinating moment in American history, and it led to a lot of transition. I also then want to think about this Stono Rebellion as an act of resistance, protest against injustice. And this is about 30 years before the Boston Tea Party, you know? So it's like kind of like in the DNA of America to resist, to protest. But we know about the Boston Tea Party and what it led to in the fight against England, but this one we don't know about as well. So it just, to me, it centers other histories that we need to know more about, and fight for it. And the fight against injustice in America really does run deep, and it's been part of the country since it began. And I think that's a wonderful thing to talk about, you know.
Now I'm going to take some liberty with that moment in time, because in 1739, the rebellion happens. In 1740, the Negro Act is established to make congregating formerly enslaved Africans or using drums. And so what our people do is begin to still use sounds, but to use the body and use the hands and use the sound of feet.
That is why the Stono Rebellion, that's why this story was so important to Step Afrika, because we were curious about why we used our body as an instrument in the first place. We knew that it was stepping practiced by African-American fraternities and sororities, but that's in the early 1900s. When did Africans begin to use a body? When did African-Americans in particular begin to use a body as a drum? And that took us all the way back to 1739 and 1740. And that Negro Act of 1740 is something that is online. I would highly, anyone watching, I would Google the Negro Act of 1740 and read it. It's a fascinating act of history. And you can see, I'd love to have a discussion about that when we get to Seattle, what people read there. And then when they see the show, I mean, just so many conversations that could happen from just the reading of that act alone.
Yeah, but talk about step as an act of resistance. You can take away the drum, make congregating illegal, but you can't take away the body and you can't take away the sounds we can make. Just that itself is just so powerful. What do you hope that audiences experience and take away from this performance? What kind of people do you want us to be when we leave the audience?
Well, I want us to know more about our shared experiences here. I mean, I love that Drumfolk, the work, is an opportunity to introduce history that we haven't experienced before. And I think, does it encourage us to learn more about our histories and our shared experiences here? I think that was my most basic goal for Drumfolk, was the chance to introduce a little bit of American history that most of us had never experienced before.